And that's Mark Evitts joining us next, who Mark has been on the show several times. He's a dear friend of mine. He's a friend of yours, Jimmy Mack. And I'll get into his bona fides in a second. But, Jim, you and I talk a lot about, I'm a firm believer in we are only as good as our lowest common denominator. And I like to I don't want to be the most interesting or the smartest person in the room, and luckily that's zero ever the chance. That's why I hang around people like Mark Evitts, so I can build myself up. I can be more interesting. I can be cooler. Mark is a Emmy winning. We can say that now. Composer, songwriter, musician. He's a producer. He works in TV and film, as well as he's been a road warrior with me and several big artists in the past. And most recently, he served as composer and songwriter for the Apple TV Emmy nominated, now winning series Frog and Toad, based on the best selling children's book, which is just a good representation, again, that you can go from playing for Rodney Atkins to doing a child's film to doing rap tracks to do whatever. It's, again, what we've been talking about, blending those genres. And it's just about putting your stamp, your authenticity, your creative spur on anything. And Mark Evitts is such a big one who does that. And I want to talk a little bit today how COVID kind of shifted what he does. It forced us off the road, and it forced us to reevaluate and figure out what we want to do and how we want to show up. And it sort of changed the game for Mark Evitts. But before I keep doting on him, because he's one of my favorite people in the world and one of the most talented people I know, one of the weirdest, funniest, darkest people I know, please welcome to the show my friend and hopefully now yours, Mark Evitts. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
How are you?
Well, we're better now that we have you here, Mark.
Well, I'm better now that I have both of you.
I'm not sure how to take that, Mark, to be honest with you.
Take it exactly how you feel it, creepily
Yeah.
and lovingly.
Sure.
Yes.
Mark, I want to kind of open this up by asking you what you're wearing. No, what are you working on right now? What, like I said, if you weren't talking to Lindsay and I were to say, hey man, without leaving NDAs out of it, what do you got cooking right now? What is actually percolating in the mind of Evitts?
But also, what are you wearing? What are you wearing?
Do you know what I'm wearing? I'm not kidding. I'm wearing an American Songwriter T-shirt. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're great. Magazine that kind of focuses on songwriters, and they had me on their show. It was a blast to be on their show, but they gave me some pretty cool swag. So I got a American Songwriter shirt, and I'm wearing that.
Love free stuff. Free stuff. Okay, so back to Jim's real question, not the creepy question.
Yeah. So actually, it's funny. Right now, I'm actually working on an orchestration of a big band project for an artist. I can't say who, but it's like kind of a Christmas classic. But they wanted a big orchestration, and so they called me up and said, "Hey, could you do like your thing to this kind of Christmas classic?" And of course, it's like June, so that's. Everybody in the music industry knows that's when you start recording Christmas music. You start doing it in the summer so it can be ready for Christmas.
Christmas in the summer, which it's speaking of Christmas, I keep talking about the BET Awards because I watched them a couple nights ago, and Rick Rain was on right before you, who we're doing
amazing.
We're doing a collaboration with. But Mariah Carey and Snoop Dogg were two of the people that got the Icon Award. And speaking of Christmas, Nobody sets Christmas into motion like Mariah Carey, of course.
Of course, yeah.
Of course. And it's so what is it about that? Just I want to bring that up. What is it about All I Want for Christmas Is You done in Mariah's way, or these things? I'm so curious. These things that would, how to you in your mind, Mark? How and why does something become iconic? Like, is it equal parts? I don't know how that happened. It was just magic. Or is there thought that goes behind to how do we make sure this is a flagship song forevermore? What's the balance of those two?
You know what's interesting is and I've thought about this song so much. I love Christmas music, and I actually love. I'm so glad we're doing the Christmas segment. Segment on Radio Nemo, Christmas edition in June. No, I love that song, and I think that I'm almost positive it's a 12/8 shuffle. I know that sounds technical, a lot of technical jargon, but it's a 12/8 shuffle. Like it starts off with that piano, and I think that shuffle and that 12/8 feel. It's like one of my favorite Faith Hill songs. If My Heart Had Wings. It's the same thing. It's that 12/8 feel. And to me, no one ever uses that. It's so underused, and it's like literally one of my favorite feels of all time. And it has this sort of thing that puts it, because it's such an interesting, unique feel, it puts it in a category all of its own. Not a lot of people use it. And so when you hear that piano, obviously Mariah's vocal at the beginning, but when that piano kicks in, and it starts doing that, it's such a unique, interesting sound, which is what every producer, anybody that's making music, what do they want? They want something unique that's going to stand out. And to me, that's what makes that song stand out.
Ooh, I love that. That just excited me.
Mark,
Mark,
this is very connected to this. The idea that, when you work in the arts, and the idea of Christmas in July, Christmas in June, Christmas whenever, is that so much of what we do is about delivering stuff not today. I mean, nothing's worse than telling an artist, hey, I need a spot, so work your magic and I expect it tomorrow. And you're like, excuse me? The idea of you don't create an album in a night. You might create one song off the album in a night once you've kind of got your juices flowing. But for the most part, it's a lot of work to kind of get there, which means when you're planning for like a Halloween release, for a horror movie, when you're planning for, a Christmas album to come out, when you're planning to do a painting series about the spring, you have to live outside of time as an artist. You're consistently living outside of time, and yet so much of what we do artistically is rooted in the place and time to speak to a moment when it happens. Do you ever feel that disassociation, the idea that it's like, you're getting ready for your big summer, surfing album in the depths of December? I mean, when you're working on a Christmas piece right now, do you find yourself drifting towards Christmas and going, wait a minute, I got a pool party I have to go to at some point. I really want to go enjoy a hot dog in the sun.
Mark loves a pool party. Mark loves being in his bathing suit.
Just taking my clothes off in general in public is my favorite thing in the world. Obviously joking. No, that's a great question. I had a guy, he was a bit of a mentor for me. His name's Alex Garingas. And Alex, he told me that he does something. I thought it was so interesting. He's before he was a musician, he was an actor. He's a composer, writes music, and producer, writes music. And he said, I get into character, and he goes, if I'm working on a hip hop thing, I might wear a lot more like urban wear, street wear. And he literally has clothes for the genre he's going to be working in. He also changes the lighting in his room, and he does all these things to sort of get into the headspace of whatever he's working in. And so if he's working on something that's like a little bit darker, he may wear all black. I sort of do the same thing. I try to sort of get into that mindset, into that character, that feel, because all music, we're I mean, for me, like, the Beatles sort of won music. They won it, and I'm and same with like, there's these people that just like won already, and I'm gonna do my best if I can emulate them or come up with something that sort of sounds like somebody else, or so. That's like what I'm saying. It's like you these people that are iconic, that have already done this. It's like, how do I grab that unique thing? Well, what I do is I try to get into that mindset, that thing. And so I may play music ahead of time, or dress a certain way, or just get my head into that space, and then but use references in that. And then once I'm in there, then I can feel, I'm like, oh, here's four walls and a ceiling. This is what it looks like. I know what this looks like. What can I do? How can I bounce around this room? And how can I kind of create my own thing, knowing that the structure has already kind of been pre-built for me? Like the blueprints of all. We're not going to beat Bach. You know what I mean? We're not going to beat the Beatles.
Oh, we're coming for him.
Principle.
Mark, we're coming
Yeah.
for him. We're coming for him. I got my eye on Bach, dude. I got to tell you right now, I'm done with
Yeah.
it. It's time to take a
Yeah.
flag there. I get what you're saying, though. You're not going to bring down Beethoven. You're not. Nobody is ever going to take on something like Ode to Joy and win that
Right.
fight. It ain't going to happen.
But you can sort of use those as blueprints to do your own thing. That's not a problem. I mean that I think that we try to steal as much as beg, borrow, and steal from the greats as much as we can, and just try to do our own thing to it. And how does that look? But in order to get there, we do have to sort of recognize that the greats have already done this, and how do we get into that character?
Well, and I think it becomes a melting pot, Mark, of what's inside of us. So it's like for instance, Rick Rain, who was just on, you and me, which also have different musical backgrounds, and then Rick Rain, very different, and then Kopi, his producer. The four of us got in a room together. So it's combining subconsciously everything that's embedded in all four of us, or whoever's in a room collaborating, to whoever's in the room making the music or whatever piece of art. It's everything that we were influenced on, which to me is everything from Madonna to Guns N' Roses to Toby Keith, and to you, it's whatever you have. It's that melting pot of what's inside us, plus the emotions and the experience that are inside of every person. And then when you throw that all together, that's where, which I talk about so much, I want to take the word genre out of it and just be like, let's see what comes out of it. Because to your point, I'm not going to beat the Beatles or Bach, but I can create something else that somebody else can't beat, right? I mean, we could come up with
Absolutely.
what's new. So talk a little bit about whether it's the time that the four of us were in the room together, or any other time you're collaborating, like specifically say to when you and Rick Rain and Kopi and I were in the room. Watching them watch you do your thing was one of the most inspiring moments to me. I love that, to see equal appreciation for all that everyone brings to the table. And then when you were playing them going, oh, wow, fire, like they were freaking out. And it made me so happy. Do you get that feeling too, when you feel like we're creating something different here?
Yes, absolutely. And that is how you create stuff different. Everybody has different ears. Everybody's been raised with different music. I don't know what Rick Rain was raised on, but my very first memory, the very first memory I have was my dad was a truck driver. I was in the sitting next to my dad in the cab of the truck. We're sitting right next to him, and Amarillo by Morning came on, and I fell asleep. It was like 4 a.m. because I decided to go take off school or do something and ride in a truck with my dad. And I fell asleep in my dad's lap listening to Amarillo by Morning. Now, what's that have to do with anything? So there's this obviously iconic fiddle solo at the beginning. I'm a fiddle player. It's that's all there. However, if we look at the harmonic structure of Amarillo by Morning, it goes D to F sharp minor. Now, what is that? That's a lot of jargon. I get it. But it's a 1 to a 3 minor chord. Now, a 3 minor chord is very, very unique and very different. I take that, because I love that change, that D to F sharp minor that George Strait does in that. I take that change, I put it in hip hop. I put it in different things because it's so cool. Regardless of genre, that harmonic change from a D to an F sharp minor is so freaking cool. And when you take what whether it's chord changes or the way you approach something, and you put it in a new genre, you sort of are building new walls and a new ceiling. You're sort of expanding how tall that ceiling is, and you're saying, hey, this looks different now. This looks, slightly, it just doesn't look like the norm of what we're used to seeing. And so when you know how to manipulate those kinds of things and throw in those things, it sort of does catch people's ear, and it sort of does say, whoa, what was that? That's cool. When all I'm doing is I'm playing a thing from Amarillo by Morning, and that's that maybe these guys aren't used to. So I think you can, again, beg, borrow, and steal from different things from your background, from your whatever it is. At that time I wasn't playing music. I was just a little kid sitting in my dad's semi, but it sort of has related to what I do in a professional world now.
You could beg, borrow, and steal as long as it's less than, is it 7 notes? Is
Seven
that what
notes. Yeah.
7 note? Because it's what is Alan Parsons Project? I am the eye in the sky, and then you've got it's a quarter after one that Lady
Yeah.
Antebellum did. You got
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
the big that was one of the big ones. You got to be less than 7 notes.
George
You
Harrison
got
actually,
well.
the George
I know it's
Harrison
more
on
than
the
that.
it's the revisit on the George Harrison because he actually lost his case, and then years later they came back and settled in his favor. Where they were like, My Sweet Lord, they're like, they went back and showed that everybody had been using He's So Fine
Yeah,
before even
exactly.
He's So Fine got written. Mark, I wanted to ask you something because this actually relates directly to what like a lot of our listeners do for a living. And I noticed you did this. You what is it? You learn it to forget it, to know it. And I
Absolutely.
notice you talk about the idea of actually hearing the notes, where you stop listening in regards to the music and the moment and the moving of it and begin to hear it mechanically. But you are able to simultaneously do both, where you can be deeply moved and impressed by the music that's unfolding while at the same time doing a technical analysis. It's kind of like it's music literacy in many ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Go ahead.
yeah, it's the same as like reading a great book. I mean, if you're reading a book, you obviously know how to read and you know how to do things. But if you get emotionally touched by the words on the page, it's not because you didn't know how to read. Like, I mean, obviously you know how to read, but you're kind of taking that all in at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, I think about like passages from Hemingway where I'll realize, man, that is the most masterful use of a single sentence paragraph I've ever seen in my life, while at the same time being completely in the story that is being told at the moment. And I think about the guys behind the wheel who are able to kind of know exactly what's wrong with their truck or exactly what's right about their truck, while at the same time simply enjoying the music playing in the background. And I'm wondering, are there moments for you as a performer where you're able to kind of leave there and just get to that state that Victor Turner calls flow, or what athletes call the zone? Are there places where you actually forget all that you know and are still able to be there?
Yes, that is the sweet spot. I mean, so if I'm getting called for a Lindsay Lawler show, and Lindsay says,
Ugh,
"Hey, I want you
you
to
would be
play on
so
the,"
lucky.
I would be so lucky. So if Lindsay calls me and says, "Hey, I got this new song I wrote. I want you to play it." So what she'll do? She'll send me usually like an MP3 or something to where I listen to the song. I have an emotion. Here's my thing. I listen to Lindsay's music. I have an emotional meltdown, and then I regain my strength. That's usually
Right.
the order of this.
Right.
And so I'll listen to it. I always listen through first time, and then I go, oh, here's the story she's telling. Here's what she's doing. And then I make a chart of it. I say, okay, it sounds like it's going from a G to a C to a D to an E minor, blah, blah, blah. And I'll make a chart of that and kind of build out the structure of it. And then I'll be like, oh, that sounds like she hired a fiddle player to play this part in here. So I may listen to what they're doing. But then I go back and I go, okay, I've got the song down. I know what's happening in this song. Now that I know where the spots are happening, I've got a chart in front of me. I know where the things are happening. I'm going to get out of the way and let Lindsay still tell her story. So when I play this live, it's still Lindsay telling her story. I know where to come in, but I want to have the same emotional reaction the first time I heard it. And so I think, how can I get inside that moment? How can I get inside that and still play, the notes that need to be played, but also figure out just how can I make music with Lindsay? How can I make this all an interactive moment between me, the band, and Lindsay? So I usually do exactly that. I memorize it, I figure it out, and then I sort of put it away and then say, okay, let me have that same emotional feel that I felt the first time I heard this song.
Ooh. Well, go ahead, Jim.
We're both so excited, Mark, by the way. We're like, we both put our fingers up and talk, and it's like, no, you go, no, you go, no, you go. The thing that always like strikes me is we're always chasing the replication of that first moment. And that seems to be almost kind of, as you said, the sweet spot, the place that everybody wants to go. Feels, like to quote Foreigner, those great classic towering artists of rock and roll, it feels like it'll never feel again. And that kind of becomes the real kind of holy grail of what we're trying to do, which is why we're always trying to play with new combinations of notes in the hopes that they will, in fact, produce that dopamine rush. Is that fair?
Right. Yeah, and the energy involved with it. I think that there's an energy to every song. It's not just the notes on the page, or it's just not the notes that were played in the studio, but how can you create an energy and bring a liveliness to something that is just, again, notes on a page or something. Just like reading like I said, reading a great book or a poem. You read this stuff, or exactly, let me just say this real quick, because I think that this is exactly what you were saying. I drove a U-Haul the other day, and it didn't have satellite radio in it, and I couldn't use my phone because it was like I was driving a U-Haul, and I didn't want to mess with electronics, so I just turned on the radio, and I rolled down the window, and I just drove this U-Haul, and I go, oh my God. How many of us are distracted by all kinds of things instead of just listening to the radio and just drive? Because just driving, and I know that truck drivers out there, they feel that, they're out there and they get to have that energy from having getting out on the road on a fresh day and having whatever obstacles come, they can still feel that love of the road, and it's super cool.
Well, and it is super cool, and that we keep saying the word. It's a feeling, it's an emotion, it's an energy.
Yeah.
And we had Gary Graff on earlier today, who's a legendary music journalist, and we were talking his book, the 501 Essential Albums of the 80s. We'll be having him back next month to talk about the 90s. But it's a feeling. And, I talk about getting into a meditative state a lot, which makes a lot of people roll their eyes at me. But I think truck drivers in particular, you don't realize, give yourself more credit. You're in a meditative state when you're on the road, and you're not thinking about so much as what you do, as feeling what you do. And if that's an album you put on, I can be in a meditative state. I just drove back from the mountains, and it just putting music on and driving, and when you can't do 10 things at a time and you can only focus on the task at hand, it is a meditative state. What kind of albums, Mark, to you put you in a meditative state? And I'm talking albums front to back, and let's go back 80s, let's say an 80s album that puts you in a meditative state.
Okay, now that's a great question. Genesis, Invisible Touch, that whole album definitely does that for me. I'm going to sound like such a nerd.
I just love that you said the Invisible Touch does it for you. I hear you, brother.
She reaches in and grabs right hold. Hey, guys, she reaches in and grabs right hold of your heart. There it is.
Girl.
There it is. There it is.
It's so good. I love that album. There's this, and I know I sound like such a nerd. There's a classical album that I had when I was middle schooler or something. I used to read. Okay, I'm making myself nerdier. Scores. I used to read the score along with listening to this album, but it was Dvorak's Symphony Number 9, which is the New World Symphony, and that puts me in such a state. And there's a couple of albums that do that, but yeah, Genesis, Invisible Touch, Dvorak's Symphony Number 9, this one particular album that's out there.
Mark,
great.
Mark, really quickly, have you heard Symphony Number 9 at the American Legion? It's the best, dude. That's the real stuff right there. I'm sorry, I had to get that in there. I'm sorry.
I don't get it.
No, the idea that everybody always says you haven't heard the real band until you've heard them at the American Legion, bootleg tape. By the way, Brad Bentley wants to tell you hi, Mark Evitts. He's here, by the way. Tell him.
Oh, hello.
Good morning. And mine would be Van Halen, 1984. That's your graduated high school. Had some great memories from that. They had the song Panama on it. I remember going to Panama City for a graduation trip. And then Appetite for Destruction, Guns N' Roses, 87 for me, too.
That's what Tara.
Yeah.
Killer.
That's what Tara
Absolutely
put down.
killer when I was in college.
What else you got, Mark?
Yeah.
What else is gnawing at you? Mark?
For albums?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. I'm going to have to think about that. But You know what? Dude, there's another one. They're a great one. The Forrest Gump soundtrack. If you listen to that, that's like such a great soundtrack, and it's all these songs from like the 60s and 70s, and I've heard it so many times because I owned it as a kid that it literally, I'll put it on front to back, know every single song, know every single word, and it's great, like kind of oldies music. It's awesome.
But plus the what's the feather flying song that's just
the score, Alan Silvestri's score for it's phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, there you go. Talk about a feeling and a state that puts you in. Okay, so Mark. Also, these are 3 questions that for this new show we have, Road Gang Radio. The whole idea, we're talking basically anything from travel, tech, culture, entertainment, the things you do out on road life, the road warrior life, whether that be for work or for pleasure. So the 3 questions that we ask our guests at the end of these shows, Mark, is if you're going to go somewhere this weekend, Mark, where are you going? How are you getting there? And what are you listening to along the way? So if you and Emily, you and the lovely love of your life are heading out on a little road trip, where are you going? How are you getting there? What are you listening to along the way?
That is great. You know where I haven't been in a while that I've been wanting to go is Asheville, North Carolina. I love going to the Biltmore. So I would say that, Asheville, Biltmore. How am I getting there? I'm driving and I'm taking I-40 to get there. Windows rolled down. Just enjoying that beautiful, beautiful scenery. What am I listening to? I think I'm going to listen to Radio Nemo the vast majority of the way there.
Oh, fantastic. And by the way, what a great place to land this plane. Evitts, tell them where they can go to find out more about you really quick. You got about, 30 seconds, Trey? About 30 seconds. Go.
Yeah, so my name's Mark Evitts, MarkEvitts. V is in victory. We're all victorious.
Yes.
With my last name. I don't know. I just made that up. I was trying to come up with a thing. Yeah, my name's Mark Evitts, and you can find me on any of the socials. I'm there. And I usually post stuff the projects I'm working on, or, my kid, my dogs. It's all on there.
All things Mark Evitts. Check him out. I follow him on Instagram. That's my favorite place. Mark, I love you. I'll see you tonight at my house for dinner, friend, and we'll continue this conversation.
Looking forward to it.
Love you, brother. Mark Evitts. Check him out. This has been another installment of Road Gang Radio. We'll be back here tomorrow. Jimmy Mack on air from 7 to 9 with Dre. I'll join him at 9 o'clock. Another fun day. Thank you guys for listening. Continue to subscribe on Radio Nemo at YouTube.